Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Man Sports Fan Podcast. This is your host, Philip Arthur Schultz. I'm here with Chris Smith 9 and Frem. How are you guys tonight?
Wonderful.
Doing good. We got our fantasy baseball draft on Saturday, which we're all participating in. So this is a week of great measure. Plus we got the tournament, right? So all good.
Yeah, there's so
All
much going
good.
on in sports right now. We apologize for not having a pod in the last couple weeks. We recorded, and technical difficulties, mostly led by me, were happening. And so Chris didn't post it, but I guess looking at it now, kind of doing some editing, he's going to post it. Is that true?
I think we're gonna revive it. I believe.
Can't wait.
Okay, the rumors are true. The pod is coming out. So you'll get a double dip this week. Yeah, we posted right after the Purdue game. So we talk a lot about Rutgers and Purdue there. And so, yeah, we're going to jump right in because we know there's a lot to cover. We usually come out with some kind of funny question, like what's your Reddit karma right now, or where were you 15 years ago on this day? But instead, we're just going to jump right in because a lot to cover. Right, this past weekend was the Big Ten tournament, and a lot of kind of leading up to it. Right, Wisconsin beating Rutgers at home. Second half, kind of looking like the Badgers of old on some level. At least the ones that we first saw for the first 15 games of the year. Then going to Purdue, playing a really good game against Purdue on the road. Edie getting every call, us having a lot of fouls, just like we happened this past weekend. And Badgers getting within 4, but ultimately just not shooting very well, especially from deep. I think we're 5 of, or maybe 3 of 26, or something crazy, something really bad. So we end up losing by 8 on the road. Go into the Big Ten tournament as a 5 seed, meaning we don't get the double bye, which is sad, but we got a bye. And so we're going to talk more. We won't go into each game individually, but Chris was actually there live from Minneapolis at the Big Ten tourney with our other boy Addison Peck, and he stayed at the Hilton Minneapolis, a great institution, really good revenue manager over there. Chris, how was the tournament? Just being there, atmosphere, everything.
So it's a loaded question. So when you ask about the atmosphere, I'm not gonna lie, Minneapolis was a little bit of a letdown in terms of bringing the vibes for the tournament. Like you could walk down the street and there's just you couldn't even tell there's anything going on. So from that standpoint, it was kind of odd. And the stadium was only like half full most of the time. The championship game got maybe close to 3/4 full. So from that end, it was a little disappointing. But what I will say is when Addis and I were driving up to Minneapolis, we're like, our goal is just make it to Saturday. Let's just get to Saturday, and then we're playing with house money. And obviously the Badgers come out against Maryland and they just dominated, right? Like that was the team that we had seen earlier in the year. And they didn't even need to play their starters in the second half. It was great. Then we go into game 2 against Northwestern. And outside of that early run they made when Boo Buie was just going crazy, they pretty much controlled the game, I felt like. And then obviously Purdue. I mean, I tweeted out like that game was just an all-time game, right? That game was awesome. It was just back and forth shot making. You're right about the calls. Like, how do you call Edie? I don't know how you officiate Edie. It's dumb and it doesn't make sense.
America also doesn't know and is on our side.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And then obviously pulling that out, like 2 clutch plays, right, to end regulation and then to end overtime. That's the team that since we started this pod, that's the team we have not seen. And then they carried it over to Illinois, and they played exceptional. I wasn't even mad that they lost. I mean, they just played so well. They hung with them. Terrence Shannon was just too good. So overall, great experience. I had one of the best weekends of my life in terms of just watching basketball all weekend, and there were great games. So yeah, good vibes all around.
That's awesome. Well, let's get into it. I mean, we could talk a lot about each game in particular. Got a lot to cover though on the pod tonight. So what are just some general takeaways each of you have about Bucky's run in the Big Ten tournament?
Yeah, anyone that's followed along here probably knows I'm the pessimist of this crew here. Probably more down on Bucky than anyone. Even going out to say I think Guard would be fired at the end of the year. I think this tournament run definitely saves Guard. I think Guard has earned another year after this run, even if they have a complete flop in the NCAA tournament. I think this run I think is gonna reignite some passion for Guard, and maybe I think at least show that hey, this program has something here, and that Guard can rally the guys and get them going. So really inspiring to see us shoot the ball well. We've talked about the 3-point shot, how we've not made it over and over again at nauseum, I think, here. And we finally saw the ball go in the hoop from the Badgers. And then I think we just saw a fire and a passion and an energy that we just had not seen from this team in the month of February. Pretty safe to say there. And then, just like you said, Chris, just competing down the stretch against Illinois. We almost won the Big Ten tournament. I think that's just the bottom line there. We almost won it, right? Klesmit hits that three. We're tied. Just can't go punch for punch with them down the stretch there. But it was really close. If Chucky makes that layup at the hoop there, who knows? I mean, that's kind of how we beat Purdue. It was down to the wire, right? And so I think this team has shown that they can play with anyone right now, and I think there's a lot of excitement for Badger basketball after the tournament.
Yeah, kind of my thoughts. I mean, Chucky Hepburn and AJ Storr are just playing next level basketball right now. And I would take those two to battle any day of the week, the way they've played lately. Another kind of interesting nugget from the weekend is that we really didn't have Tyler Wall this weekend. I mean, he was always in foul trouble, didn't play much. So we sort of got a glimpse of the future, which is super intriguing. Um, and we, like I said, Carter Gilmore was sort of a standout. I mean, he played some big minutes for us um, in place of Wall because he just couldn't stay on the court. But overall, they just played hard. John Blackwell played really well against Maryland, and then he tweaked his ankle, and he did not look the same at all the rest of the weekend. But other guys stepped up, and that's what we talked about when we first started this podcast. Like, you never know who's going to be that guy that steps up, and they all had their moments this weekend. Which, like I said, carrying that momentum into the tournament is going to be huge. But the way they played, I mean, we can compete with anyone. It's kind of how I feel right now. Like didn't win the tournament, but riding a huge high in terms of what the ceiling is right now.
Well, and I think we saw that at the beginning of the year. And so it's like, yeah, old Bucky's back, right? I mean, these first 15 games, getting to number 6 overall in the nation, we just saw that level of play over this tournament. Really, I think the second half of Rutgers when we played Rutgers, a couple of games before the Big Ten tournament, they started to look like they did before, hitting shots, that kind of thing. The big things for me, Klesmit finally getting his 3-ball back. You could see it. He looked confident, and man, he hit some clutch threes in situations where we needed a 3. I don't think Chucky's making any mistakes right now. And it's fun to watch a basketball point guard just look completely in control the entire time on offense. And then defense pretty much able to take away, or at least to really harass a player consistently throughout a game where they feel uncomfortable. And I think against Illinois, we just ran into a team that offensively is hitting everything that's open. And then also you have Terrence Anderson.
Terrence
Shannon. There, thank you. Put them all together. And a guy that's obviously playing lights out basketball, getting calls also when he's going to the hoop. And then Damask out of Waupun, Wisconsin, who we just didn't have an answer for. That was a bad matchup for us. But man, I just think Bucky's hitting on all cylinders. And I think the also thing that was sneaky was that Crowell, not that he always played super aggressively, always looked to score, but he was hitting the 3-ball consistently too. And when he's hitting that 3, I feel like he's a different player on both ends. And yeah, I just a lot to be excited about with Bucky. So maybe you guys have other thoughts, but what do we need to continue to do, or how do we sustain the success coming up to the NCAA tournament? Play James Madison, who's the 12 seed. We're a 5, and then most likely either play the winner of Duke Vermont. Most likely Duke, but you never know with Vermont. But what would we need to do to continue the success moving forward?
Shout out to Shannon Anderson. Played the Utah Jazz in the late '90s. Just want to note him. I know he's listening. But no, I think shooting is obvious. But I think it was about 22% we shot in that Purdue game there, and we won. So I think that shows that we can get to the paint, we can play defense. Get to the free throw line, get fouls there. I think that's a big piece. The energy, I think, because the shooting is going to come and go, I think, with this team. We found that we're streaky. It's not baked into the equation that we're always going to make that three-point shot. So I think we have to have energy. I think you saw it, like you called out Carter Gilmore, great example. The guy who just brought energy. He's diving on the floor. He's just everywhere. Corey McGee, guys like that, just going out there, making plays. Chucky's just everywhere. Defensively, offensively, just all over the ball. I think that energy has to be there. And I think that's something that we just didn't see in February. And so it's that question of, can we bring that same energy? James Madison's going to give it to us. They're a 30 plus win team here coming in. They're going to be tough. I don't think it's going to be an easy game. I think we win the game. But I think that energy has to be there, of just the intensity and how we play. And if Wall has to foul out for us to have energy, I'll take it if we can win the game. So I think we just have to be really aggressive on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, I think defensively, we got to stay locked in. We were locked in all weekend, and we forced tough shots. And that's the thing about Illinois, is they just, like Phil said, they just made tough shots. And that's fine. You can live with that. But offensively, I mean, I think playing more up-tempo, getting up and down the court and looking for those opportunities to attack the rim, we were at our best when we were getting to the rim. And if we can do that, I feel very confident in our ability to easily beat Madison James, as I'm going to call them. But I mean, the other thing is Steven Crowell just needs to be aggressive, and he needs to come out fired up, because when we get that Crowell, we are a completely different team. And I know we kind of called them out the last couple weeks. So like when the team's connected and playing like this, as I said, I don't know what the ceiling is, but it's definitely not losing to James Madison. I mean, I think this team's going to be ready to go. And here's the other thing. The national narrative right now is everybody's picking James Madison. I don't think this team needs extra motivation, but if you want it, it's served on a platter for you. So that's kind of my big things. Getting up and down the court, looking for opportunities to score early. If not, just move on offense. When they move, they're a completely different team. So, feeling good right now.
Yeah, who knew that something as simple as moving on offense actually is a good point to make? Because it really is true with this team. When they're standing around and they're kind of waiting for something to happen, and that does happen periodically in their possessions. But yeah, I think that's a good point. Just the general flow of the offense when it's up tempo and they're moving, backdoor cuts, that kind of thing. Even if they're not getting the ball, it does run the system more. And they seem to find the shot within 30 seconds. They seem to find a good shot almost every time. I think the big thing is, I know Wall, he didn't have a great tournament, or just not even necessarily was bad, but just didn't play a lot. He got a lot of fouls. I think they need to stay out of foul trouble early. I think Carter Gilmore had some good minutes, and I do trust him, but he's just not going to give you the offense that Wall can. Crowell has been pretty good about avoiding fouls at times, and maybe it'll matter less against James Madison, who's a smaller team. Against Duke, it will matter. Assuming it is Duke, that will matter in the round of 32, because I just think that they offensively and even defensively just do so much more than Carter Gilmore or Nolan Winter. And so I think that will matter. I think a lot of the NCAA tournament is often about making shots. So are we going to shoot 5 for 26 from 3 or 10 for 22? I think if we shoot 10 for 22, we're going to win. If we shoot 50% from 3, we'll probably win every game that we shoot that. If we shoot 25%, it's a toss-up in my head. Mostly from what we saw during that really tough run around 12 games where they just really weren't hitting any threes. And granted, they looked disjointed during those 12 games, where I think this Big Ten tournament has revived them. And so, yeah, I definitely feel confident. And again, a couple of weeks ago, we weren't feeling that. We're like, oh gosh, where's this going? Is Guard even going to stick around? That's a good segue into this last question before we kind of enter into all March Madness here. How are we feeling about guard? Right? We kind of hesitant, kind of on the fence of what his future was or what we really thought of him as the future of the head coach. Yeah, so what do we think?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I was listening to another podcast, shout out to the Bucky Report here, and just kind of getting some other takes on how people feel about guard. And there's even the take out there that people want the Badgers to lose right now, just to get rid of guard. I think there are some people in the camp of the Badger faithful that don't want to see him be the coach anymore. I think you could frame this as we got hot at the right time and kind of saved his job here. There's going to be a lot of questions if we somehow lose to James Madison. To Chris's point, I don't think we're going to lose as much as the national narrative is out there and the hype is out there. But if for some reason we did, I think there are a lot of things start to creep in of, just a lot of questions. I think he's got another season at least. I think if he gets to the Sweet 16 here, I think he's probably good to go here for a while. But if we somehow even don't make the Sweet 16, I think there's a lot of pressure on guard here to perform. Even though I do think no matter how we do, I think this run at least bottom another year. And I don't know, overall, I just don't have vibes that he's a long-term coach, even if he gets one more year. But right now, I think he's at least safe for now.
Yeah, if I had a scale 1 to 10, like how concerned am I? 1 to 10, I'd say 0. I mean, I just think I know we've over the past couple of weeks, it's been really frustrating, but there's no part of me that thinks they're going to bring in someone that could do better than him. And truthfully, for example, I was looking at a stat this weekend. We are the best team in the Big Ten by far in terms of running, scoring possessions on out of bounds plays. Greg Gard is a really good coach, and the key is going to be how he continues to recruit in the portal, in the NIL age. But he's got I've talked about before, he's got an extremely talented point guard coming in next year. I'm assuming everyone's coming back. I have no reason to believe. I mean, even Connor Season said he's already coming back. So it's I think this whole team's coming back together. I do think they need to find a wing in the portal to replace Wall and be a little bit more physical and shoot better. But I don't know who you're going to go out and get that's better, because Greg Gard understands Wisconsin. He understands the system. All of his recruits are former players. And we saw this weekend, the system works. You just have to have the players in a position to play well. And I don't know. Over the last couple weeks, I don't know if it was the players. I don't know if it was Gard, but they just weren't focused. That completely disappeared. So the fact that happened amidst this really poor stretch of games shows me that's probably not the coach. So I feel confident. I like where the team's at. I like the future of where we're at. I mean, we could be better next year. So I don't know. I hear you, Brian, but I don't see a scenario where Gard's not the coach for the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, I think the only big criticism of Gard is the swoon we always have midseason.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if he knows. And it's well, is he changing anything? Is he doing anything differently? Is it just February in Wisconsin, January, February, where it's dreary and dark? And I don't know. You don't really know some of those dynamics or what goes on behind the scenes. I think he is a good coach. I think there are just frustrations in the moment. And then yet I go back to what you said, Chris, who are you going to get that's better, that you trust more? I even think he's adjusted some things. We've started picking guys up full court. Man, when is the last time we've done that? And It almost feels like he knows his team to make those small adjustments, or maybe players have even said, hey, we should try this. And he's listened. I feel like, he's been always kind of more of a player's coach, even more than Bo Ryan. And I think he's tightened the reins a little bit. And like Brian said on an earlier pod, maybe trying to find the line of what it means to be a player's coach versus, kind of be a little bit more strict. And I think if anything, he's just coming more into his own of what it is to be a good coach. And yet, we lose to James Madison. We don't get to the Sweet 16 again. I think these questions will kind of always be there. So I'm almost in the middle of y'all where I'm man, I'm excited about what Gard could be. I'm excited about what Wisconsin basketball could be. and yet, like, I don't know. We have another swoon next year. I think these questions will always be there until we get almost some more consistency, because you get to number 6 and then you go on such a bad stretch. And so, but it's just easy to be really reactionary in the moment. We're coming off a high, so it's like, oh my gosh, the Badgers are playing awesome, and yet we just looked really poor in the middle of the season. So I don't know. I'm conflicted, but
yeah. One thing I'll say, just a couple things. Like, if you ever watch the post locker room videos, I mean, that team loves Guard, and Guard loves those players. And the other thing is, even amongst playing poorly for the month that they did, you never heard a player call out the coach. You never heard any sort of, we're mailing this season in, or we're still not focused. Like, they never wavered from that. And to me, that's part of coaching too. Because it's really easy once you start losing to start pointing fingers and blaming other people and start looking over the fence, like transfer portal, but it's not happening. So clearly these players trust him. It's just a matter of playing well. I mean, everything has to click in order to win in the Big Ten, which is a tough conference. So,
Brian, final word.
Yeah, if you listen to the CBS cast on the last couple of games there against Purdue and Illinois, there's a lot of commentary on the culture of Badger basketball, and they couldn't help but talk about Bo Ryan multiple times. I think the culture is something really special about Badger basketball, going all the way back to Dick Bennett and when they started that run in 99 or so. And I think that's really the brand of Badger basketball is the culture, and I think the standard we've created. Now, I don't think that standard has to be upheld necessarily by Guard. I think it's just the Wisconsin brand at this point. The real big key, and you hit it, Chris, is it's a new game. We're in the NIL world, and if Guard can recruit, he'll stay. So if Guard can bring in, like you said, Chris, I believe that's makes a lot of sense to bring in a wing player next year. I think he'll be okay. But this is the game you need to recruit, and this is college basketball right now, college sports for that matter, with the NIL right now. So it'll be interesting to see if he can recruit, and I think that'll really determine his future and I think that's anyone's future right now in D1 basketball. So
yeah, I think you're a fair point. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I think you're a faux Badger fan if you want them to lose so they fire a Guard. To me, that's crap, because it just says something about who you are as a person if you think that. So anyway,
well, right, you're like wanting someone to fail, right? And I don't want anyone to fail. So
right.
Hey, can I throw one more nugget out before we transition? This is a great nugget from this weekend, but if you watch the play that sent the Badgers to overtime against Purdue, did that play ring a bell to you at all?
Bronson Koenig?
Yes. So that's the exact same play that they ran for Bronson Koenig. It's the first time they've run that play since Bronson Koenig hit that shot against Xavier. The coolest thing about that is Bronson Koenig was at the game and was on record saying as soon as he saw them line up, he said, that's the play that we ran. And sure enough, it is. Chucky saw that the three wasn't there, drove to the basket, and hit the layup. So kind of a cool little thing that happened.
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, hey, let's transition to all of March Madness here. And we talked about different ways we could do this. You could go game by game. You could go region by region. I think just for time's sake, and because we wanted to get to some NFL free agency and some Packers stuff, we're just going to go through and just talk about, hey, who do we think's a bust? Who's a breakout sleeper? What's the upset? And we'll keep going down the line. So let's start here. We didn't add this, but I want to start with it. Actually, no. You have this later. So we'll start with this. Who is the bust of the tournament in your guys' minds?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick couple here. I think Iowa State had a great run in the Big 12 there, beating Houston, the championship. It's always that debate of if you win your conference tournament, do you have enough in the tank here? I think they're going to run into a really good Drake team that took out Indiana State in the Missouri Valley there. So I really like Drake to beat Iowa State. And then, great question on who is that other bust here. Baylor. I have Baylor going out as a 3. I also have, I'll do 3 here quick. Kansas has some injuries right now. Sanford, I like the upset there as well.
Yeah, it's sort of similar. So you pick Baylor. I would agree with Baylor. I would also put Alabama in there. I think St. Mary's can get by them in the second round. And they played Charleston too. Charleston could beat them. Marquette, I think it's sort of a bias pick a little bit, but they're just not playing well right now, and Kolek hasn't been playing. They have a nice road to get to the Sweet 16, but I think as we were talking off air, I think we all kind of like Kentucky a little bit to do some damage there. And then another one, as I kind of look at it, is where was it? Totally just deviated my. Yeah, so the other one is Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga was overseeded. Being a 5 was very odd to me. And although they have a nice matchup, like if they get to Purdue, I think Purdue will take them down. So I don't know how many first round upsets there are going to be, but I think there's some teams that got overseeded that I don't foresee a path to them to get much further.
I think there's a reason we're doing this pod together, because we are like-minded in so many ways. The one that I have that you maybe don't is I think Houston busts out. And here's why. I think it's defensively, they're a monster. Defensively, they can play with anybody. It's their offense. And it's not that it can't be good, but I mean, the way they bowed out against Iowa State, it's not like it's happened that many times to them this year, granted. But I think my big one is Nebraska beating them, because Nebraska can shoot against anybody. And Nebraska's defense the last 10 games or so has been very, very good, or gotten a lot better than what it was first 20 games of the season. So that's my one huge kind of bust. Let's get to the sleeper, the breakout. Talk about who's that one team for you that you think is going to be kind of break out or kind of overplay their seed.
I wish I had more great things to say about them. I just like their path. I like, their energy right now. Just seeing some of their guard play in their conference championship. New Mexico, I like them to the Elite Eight. I think Arizona here, just seem like they're a little colder as of late right now. And I just like New Mexico's path there, and I think that West bracket could be maybe the weakest there. I don't have them going to the Final Four, but I wouldn't be surprised a team like New Mexico making it all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah, so this may be a little under the radar, but kind of a deep sleeper, I think, is Yale. So Yale plays Auburn. Auburn's obviously coming off the high of winning the SEC championship. I could see that being somewhat of a trap game. And then if they win, Yale would then play San Diego State or UAB. And I don't know if you guys have watched San Diego State much this year. They're not the same team they were last year. They just can't score that well. So I could see Yale making a run to the Sweet 16. So I'll call that as my kind of deep sleeper for the tournament.
For me, I don't even know if it's a deep sleeper, but the one that I really have going farther that's more under the radar is St. Mary's. And that's just because they always have a lot of experience. They shoot pretty well normally, and they play pretty good defense. And I think they have a pretty good path to get to the Elite Eight. So I have them beating North Carolina to get to the Elite Eight. But I think in terms of deep sleeper, I think the one that I have is going the farthest is New Mexico. Out of I think some of what you guys talked about. Do we have an upset of the tournament? Maybe you already touched on it.
Yeah, I said Colgate over Baylor. I think that's probably my biggest one. I know we've had 15 and 16 seeds win in recent memory. I don't see it right now. I'm probably missing someone. I did hear a pretty crazy story about Long Beach State playing Arizona, that they actually agreed to part ways. I think they said that in CBS there. They agreed to part ways with their coach before their conference tournament. And then they went on a run and won their conference tournament. And the coach is still coaching with them. So if there's anyone that has some energy and motivation maybe to win, it would be Long Beach State. I wasn't bold enough to have it as a pick, but I think it's an interesting storyline.
Yeah, ADs out there, don't fire a coach before the conference tournament.
They were the 4 seed. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Stupid.
I'm with you, Frem. I don't see a 15 or 16 winning this year. I just don't see the path that happens. If I had to pick a 14, kind of with you on Colgate. I think Baylor's pretty vulnerable right now. They're just not playing that well, but I already touched on Yale being the team that I like. I also really like Grand Canyon. I've watched them a few times this year, and they're super talented, and St. Mary's is not. like this uber talented team. They're really good. So that's a team that could potentially get out of the first weekend too.
Yeah, it's funny. I also picked Colgate, so we really are aligned. I think the one team, and I don't have them winning, but if Texas Tech and Kentucky meet up, Texas Tech's coach used to coach North Texas, who's had some just good tournament play as a lower seed. Um, Feels like that guy knows how to coach, and so if it becomes Texas Tech Kentucky, it would just be a second round game. I have Kentucky winning, but I could see Texas Tech easily winning that game, and because of that, going pretty far in the tournament, past the Sweet 16. Just because the coach, I can't think of his name, but just from things I've read, when I've watched them, I've been impressed with Texas Tech. All right, so what is then your Final Four and champion?
Yep. So, I mean, mine is kind of chalk. I doubt it will end up quite this way, but the two teams I really cannot see losing early. UConn and Kentucky I have in the finals. And then I put in North Carolina. That's definitely the least confident of the four I am. I can see anyone coming out of that West. I think it's just a kind of a soft bracket over there. And then I have Purdue. Even though I think we've seen some of maybe Purdue's weaknesses playing the Badgers there, I still like Purdue. I think they're very dominant, like their path overall. UConn, Kentucky, it's going to be, some NBA caliber players going toe to toe. Shepard and Dillingham against the likes of Spencer and blanking on some of the UConn's Tristan Newton. They're a stacked team, and I like UConn to repeat. I saw that take out there, and I've watched enough UConn games this year, and they are just stacked. They have depth. They're really good. They have shooting. They have size. I think they're just a really hard team to beat.
Yeah, I think this is a year where the ones are just really good. Like those teams have been good all year. So I have UConn, I have North Carolina, I have Purdue, and I know I'm tipping my cards here on the Wisconsin game, but I have Duke getting to the Final Four as well. So I just bet on talent when it comes to the tournament. And like I said, Houston's kind of like you talked about, Phil. Houston's kind of that one vulnerable team where they just have games where they don't shoot well. And defensively, they're really good. But when you go against talent that can put the ball in the basket, it's hard for me to envision them making a really deep run. So, yeah, UConn, UNC, Duke, Purdue.
And you guys are down in Arizona, but I have Arizona, UConn, Kentucky, and Purdue. And Kentucky, to me, is the one I'm least confident on because I think while they can shoot, they just are streaky. And defensively, they're streaky. And so that was the one. I think that whole side of that whole bracket, I struggled to pick teams because, like you said, Marquette's not playing particularly well. And yet, if Kolek plays, they're just really good, And so I do have that. And then I do have Purdue finally, beating their demons, so to speak, or overcoming their demons and winning it all. Because I think they're due, and they have guard play this year, and I think Edey he's definitely way better than he was last year. Even I know he won Player of the Year last year, won it again this year. I think he'll be officiated differently in the NCAA tournament. I do, but man, he is a monster, and he is defensively makes such a big difference for that team. That I know there's other big men out there that are rim protectors, but he's different. And so I really think they'll shoot well through most of the tournament, which that's usually how they've lost is when they haven't shot well. They shot well against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin just beat them, right? Chucky makes an incredible play defensively, draws a charge, and we get a chance, So I think Purdue will overcome it this year and win. How far do you guys have Bucky making it?
Yeah, despite all the things, I'm trying to be a believer right now. I looked at this bracket. I'm like, why fill out a bracket of disappointment and despair? Why not be optimistic in Bucky? I have them going to the Sweet 16, losing to Houston. I will say I didn't put it down, but I do like Vermont to make it really close against Duke. I don't know, teams like Vermont, they come out, is that the Patriot League? Am I messing it up? Yeah, the Patriot League. I just feel like they're, I don't know, small schools like that. They play in a tiny little gym. They just have a lot of fire and energy. And I don't know, Duke just seems to come out flat sometimes in the tournament playing smaller schools like that. And I do like how Bucky matches up against Duke. And yeah, Houston, I know you said their offense, Phil, but their defense is really good and they're super athletic and long. And I think they would defend us like no other. And we would have to shoot lights out to beat Houston, I think. So yeah, I do have us falling in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I think we're in the weirdest bracket of the four in terms of, like you said, Phil. You could make a case for at least 5 teams to go to the Final Four, if not more. Like you said, if like a Nebraska gets hot or like a Texas Tech gets hot, like it's just a weird bracket. I already said, I mean, I have Duke going to the Final Four, so I think we beat James Madison. I actually think we beat him by double digits. I think Duke rolls Vermont. I actually watched them play this weekend. They're just small. Like, they don't have a big. And it's the America East Conference, by the way.
Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Sorry.
Had to do it. But I think Bucky plays really well with Duke. I think it's similar to Illinois. Like, I think it would be a sort of a high-scoring, back-and-forth game, and it's just going to matter coming down to hitting shots at the end, which we've been doing lately. So I'm not saying we can't beat them. I just, like I said, I sort of tend to bet on talent because when Addison and I were sitting there looking at all the champions in the history of college basketball, there's never been a champion that was a fluky champion. Like, they're all power conference teams that you'd expect. So those are the teams that I tend to lean on in the tournament. So yeah, I think they play really well. I just think it's a really tough bracket.
Well, and I think I'm obviously the optimist out of all of you because I have Wisconsin going to the Elite Eight, beating Nebraska, not having to play Houston. So if it's Houston, maybe that would change it. Although I think we play good enough defense ourselves. I mean, and here's the thing: I know the stats are not in our favor of that, but teams have just shot lights out on us all, and it feels like we figured out certain ways to kind of negate some of that or make stops when we need to. But, it's been an up and down season, so that could go at any time, I guess. But I think I had us beating Nebraska and then losing to Kentucky in the Elite Eight game. So most optimistic, but could Wisconsin make the Final Four? Sure. I actually think possible. They could. Yeah. It's definitely possible. Duke, Houston, Kentucky. I'm not sure about Marquette. Just think depth, but
yeah,
it is the weirdest bracket for sure.
I do want to say I had to go back and I was really curious because I've been hearing about Oregon getting hot late and they had to win their conference championship, and then they played Colorado. And Colorado, I have not watched them all season, but I started watching some highlights. They have shooters, and they're a team that if they make it out of the first four, like you said, Florida, I've been hearing some kind of weird things of like they've kind of played under the radar this season. If Colorado somehow makes it out there, could beat Florida, who knows? You get hot, and if Kolek is playing, not playing, I don't know. It's an interesting bracket for sure. There's just some weird things that I think could happen, and like you said, Phil, if Nebraska gets hot and knocks out Houston, who knows? It could be anyone's game.
Yeah, so Colorado has a kid that's projected to go top. Like right now, I think he's projected to go first or second in the draft. Florida's one of their best players just got hurt this past weekend, like a major injury. But Colorado plays Boise State in the play-in. Boise State's really good. Like they were underseeded in this tournament. Like I said, there's just this bracket. It is the bracket of death. I know everyone's talking about the top left with UConn. I think by far we are in the hardest bracket in terms of just teams that are talented and deep. So I don't know. It's wide open. There's a reason I throw out my bracket at the end of the first day each year.
My best bracket ever that I did was my first time that I ever did it. I think I was 15, and I think I got 7 of the 8 Elite Eight, and I don't think I've been close to that since then. So,
can we talk about one more thing? I want to talk about Illinois because we just saw. I saw them live, so maybe it's different. I think Terrence Shannon's one of the best players in the country, if not one of the best in a long time that I've seen. Like, what is their ceilings? I think they can beat UConn, like if they get there, but they also have like focus issues. Like Brad Underwood has to light a fire into them. It seems like every game just to get them going. But once they're going, holy cow! Like, could they How far could they go?
Yeah, I don't know how to say all the UConn players' name, but what Carbon or Klingon, like they just have size, and I think they would just like pack it in against a team like Illinois. I think Illinois could be, if they could somehow get past UConn, that West I think is really weak. So I think they could beat anyone in the West. I think it's going to be somebody in the East going to that championship. So if Illinois can come out, or if an Auburn or somebody upsets UConn, Illinois is in the championship, no doubt, without a doubt. I'd say they'd be in any game with anyone in the country.
Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, and the thing about that team is that everyone knows their role. Like that's the thing. It feels like when just watching them against Wisconsin, it was like, okay, every player knows exactly what they do and what they do well. And you're right. They needed to get a fire lit under them. And sometimes they have defensive lapses. I think if they get into these really high stakes games, I can't imagine they come out really, I can't imagine they don't come out for it. Yeah.
And one other quick piece is they were shooting the ball poorly against us. Like, I'm very proud of how the Badgers played in that championship game, but they could have easily scored over 100 points against us. They were missing open shots, and they're stacked. They have big guys that shoot outside. They have depth in guards. Damask is just lights out. And then Guerrier, Goody. Like, I mean, it seems like anyone on that team can get the ball and do damage. So they're a really good team. And if they weren't with UConn, I mean, they'd definitely be in the Final Four and maybe national championship.
That's what I'm going to keep reconsidering, because I mean, Terrence Shannon is so fast and he can get to any spot that he wants to. I just think they're a team that they're a team that could win it all. And you're right, Phil. Like, they know their role so well. They have two guys that can take over the game, and the rest just help get them to their spots. And like the last month, they've averaged like 90 plus points a game. Like, that's not even a joke. I think that they're averaging like 91 or something like that. So I don't know. It's a team I'm so glad we are not in anywhere near in the bracket.
I mean, I think Hurley's a better coach than Brad Underwood. I mean, if anything, he might even be the face of college basketball as a coach. Like, he's becoming kind of that guy. And yet, like, Illinois has firepower, man. And Damask is almost, I don't know UConn well enough to know who would guard him, but he's almost unguardable.
Yeah.
Because the way he's strong enough, and he's so good around the rim. He reminds me a lot of Wall, but a better shooter. Wall couldn't even guard him. Especially in Madison, he couldn't, and he couldn't this time either. It's just like, what do you do? And I definitely think they can make a deep run. And like you, Chris, I'm so glad we're not in their bracket or anywhere close to them.
I'm going to piggyback. I know I'm extending this a little bit, but I will say, if we do see the top seeds win, I think that is another commentary on the NIL and just how a lot of these big programs are stacked now because they've pulled in all the talent from these smaller schools, and the smaller schools just aren't going to have, some of these guys like Damask and I can't say his name, Connect for Tennessee, right?
SEC Player of the Year.
Right. These guys have just flooded to the primetime schools here. So if we don't see the small schools win, I think that'd be a really interesting commentary on why don't we have some of this madness? And it's because these players are all stacked on these really great rosters.
That's just such an interesting take, because a lot of people think there's more parity in college basketball because of the NIL. So it'll be interesting to see, what happens here because of that.
That's what I thought too. But then I went through these rosters and I'm like, these teams have depth. Like, they have a lot of good players, and it's tough.
I want to take the best players from small schools as a Wisconsin fan. I want more depth on our team.
Right. Hey, are we gonna put a gentleman's agreement on this? We're gonna have to have like a podcast bet here, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, who has the best bracket?
Yep.
All right. So, who the loser gets a tattoo of some kind, or what are you thinking?
I don't know. Maybe we'll let the listeners decide.
Yeah,
we need to get a dangerous game.
Well, if it's Matty G, we probably don't want that.
The constant
jumping in a
tattoo
river
right
somewhere.
Actually, that's not a bad, like, what is it called? The polar plunge. You have
Yeah,
to do a
that's fun.
polar
I've done
plunge.
that. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, let's a lot of college basketball. We're all super excited for the tournament. Comes up in a couple days. The storylines always come out of it. That really good games, really interesting teams. So it'll be fun. Let's jump to NFL free agency. We're pretty much through the whole first week of it. You had the legal tampering period Monday through Wednesday, and now we're in technically day 5 of free agency or whatever. There's a lot to talk about with the pack, which we're going to do. We just want to talk first of all, like general NFL free agency. Has there been a surprise signing or surprise move or team in your mind as we've gone through it here?
I think the most recent move is highly surprising. What the Chicago Bears got for Justin Fields, sending him to the Pittsburgh Steelers for what, a 6th round pick, 4th round at best if he plays. Just highly surprising that this guy, part of the 2021 draft class now, is a 2nd string quarterback behind Russell Wilson, of all people. And was not traded for much at all. I think just overall, maybe the shock value of what the Atlanta Falcons have done to totally retool their roster there, as I get tongue-tied there. I think the Atlanta Falcons are all the pieces they've added: Darnell Mooney, Rondell Moore, obviously Kirk Cousins. They're just a new team right now.
I hate you, Frem. Yeah,
I know.
I was gonna go.
Took your takes, didn't I?
Yeah, I was gonna take Falcons as well. I mean, I didn't think there was any shot Kirk Cousins signed anywhere but Minnesota. I just thought it felt like he wanted to be there, and their franchise is stabilized under him. So it just felt like him and Jefferson and Hawkinson and Addison, they're all solid. Like they had a good core. So him going to Atlanta and being surrounded by those weapons, you think about it, like Bijan and Algier and London, and like I said, adding Rondell Moore, Kyle Pitts, like that team is stacked all of a sudden. So that's a team that I think has done the most damage so far in terms of retooling their roster. And I would probably put them ahead of Tampa Bay right now if I had to stack them up in terms of who wins that division. So they went from a team that probably had no postseason aspirations in terms of making a run to a team that I could theoretically see making it to an NFC championship game. So I'll go with the Falcons, even though Frem did too.
Bad radio, guys. What are you doing? I'm just kidding. I think my biggest move, most surprising move, is Keenan Allen to the Bears for a 4th round pick. And not that the Chargers traded him. I think enough cap issues. The year he put up before he got hurt, they're asking him to take a pay cut. He's 32, and he's like, I'm not going to do that based on what I did, which makes sense. But the Bears getting him for a 4th round pick, really good deal for them, unfortunately. But yeah, now paired with DJ Moore for Caleb Williams when he gets drafted, right? That's looking like a pretty good 1-2 there. And then the other move, I think it was just surprising, was Calvin Ridley going to the Titans, because it's the Titans, I guess. I mean, that's obviously he's getting a lot of money, 4 years, $92 million. He's a good receiver. I know there was weird draft compensation tied to Jacksonville when they signed him, that kind of thing, for what they would give back to the Falcons, right? Falcons, yeah. And so I know there was some weirdness there, but that move was shocking. And really because, not that Will Levis couldn't be good, but Will Levis could be a good quarterback. And maybe he adds to, Treylon Burks, right? Those two together. But that's just kind of a strange move in general. You guys talk about who got a lot better. Is there a loser? Who got worse? Or who you're like, what are you doing? What's going on?
Yeah, a couple teams I think are, well, I think you could say a few teams I can think of real quick. Obviously the Minnesota Vikings, I think, easily went to the worst team in the NFC North, with the Packers loading up, the Bears obviously loading up, the Lions, making a trade here, adding some pieces, not really getting worse by any means. Vikings are going to have to draft a quarterback here upcoming and really be in a rebuild mode. I know they signed Aaron Jones. They got some defensive players, lost some defensive players. I just don't see them, being better than they were last year with Kirk. So definitely see them taking a step backward. Dallas Cowboys, I think, sat by and watched free agency happen, saw players leave. Vander Eich just retired after 6 seasons, all the neck injuries. Did not see them do anything, and everyone in their division tried to get better. The New York Giants bulking up on defense there with Brian Burns getting running from the Packers, whatnot. You saw the Commanders load up with a variety of pieces, including Eckler, and then obviously the Philadelphia Eagles losing Cox and Kelsey. We talked about that, but then you're loading up with Saquon Barkley, across the way from New York there. And I think adding some defensive pieces, got Devin White. So you look at Dallas, like, what are you doing here? Everyone else in your division is getting better. You're not. And then the Cincinnati Bengals, another one where you have pieces leaving left and right. T. Higgins wants out. I don't have the latest on his status right now. Mixon's gone now. I think Tyler Boyd is going to be out as well, and losing people on the offensive line, losing defensive players. The Browns made some moves. Ravens adding, like a Derrick Henry. Steelers obviously made a lot of moves. And so, yeah, I think, what are you doing? You have Joe Burrow, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and you're not making moves here and not surrounding him with a lot of talent. So another head scratcher. I'd say Bengals, Cowboys, Vikings.
Yeah, Frem, I think you hit on some of them that were popping into my head. The other one is, and Phil knows this team well, the Buffalo Bills. I just feel like they didn't do anything to make their team better, and they're in this window right now where I feel like you need to surround pieces around Josh Allen. Like, this is your window to win a title, and I just like, there's no one move or a couple moves that really stand out to me, but obviously having to release Tre'Davious White. Losing Gabe Davis, like, there's just some moves, releasing Jordan Poyer. Like, I look at what they did and I just feel like they maybe got a little worse. They didn't necessarily get a lot worse, but the AFC is so stacked that I don't think this roster is good enough to make it to the Super Bowl, and that's, to me, where their aspirations need to be right now.
I mean, to be fair, only because I was the simulated GM for them in a simulation. They were $55 million over the cap. So they were really limited in what they could do. And yet, to say that they got worse is probably fair, knowing that they needed to release some guys, that kind of thing. They also got rid of Mitch Morse, who was their center. And traded Ryan Bates, who was also their other center. So, I mean, yeah, they definitely got worse. I think the one team for me, just who didn't do a lot and are kind of stuck in this weird thing is a team I know well, the Denver Broncos, where it's like they've put themselves in this situation where they almost need to draft a quarterback in the first round with that pick because there's really nobody left, which is just, it's kind of a bizarre situation that they're in. And I think people in Denver are really hoping that Sean Payton, just from what he did in New Orleans, is legit and will be fine no matter who comes in there. They've named Jared Stidham the starter at this point. And he's got 4 starts under his belt, but you don't know what you're getting. And if anything, he's a placeholder, and almost everybody knows that. So they're not going in with a ton of leverage here into the draft. Not only do they still have some picks missing from that Russell Wilson trade, and they also obviously have the $85 million in dead cap or whatever. But it's like, yeah, they just haven't really done a lot. And they released another leader in Justin Simmons. They didn't get Josie Jewell back. It just feels like they're in this place where, maybe they're banking on having another bad losing year and getting a quarterback next year. But if you look at next year's class, it's not very good. So it almost feels like they're set on Nix, Penix, or JJ McCarthy. And most likely JJ's probably going top 7, top 9, which they don't have the means to trade up really, and I don't think they will because of what happened with the Russ trade. So they're the one team that I just don't think got better, and I don't think the future is bright because of, especially those mid-tier quarterbacks. You're not sure what you're getting. You're just not sure what you're getting. Let's look at the Packers moves here. So obviously we added Josh Jacobs, 4 years, $48 million. They released Aaron Jones. They had offered him a pay cut, I think $4 million guaranteed, $2 million in incentives. He turns it down, which I think makes some sense based on what he did in the last 5 games of the year. Goes to the Vikings on a 1-year, $6 million deal, or $7 million, I guess. They released Devondre Campbell, released David Bakhtiari. David Bakhtiari saved them $20 million in cap. I think they have $19 million in dead cap from that. Devondre Campbell, they did a post June 1 cut, so they're going to have $10 million extra down the road come June 1st, which they'll probably use on Jordan Love. They don't re-sign John Runyon, who goes to the Giants, and they re-signed Keyshawn Nixon, 3 years, $18 million. Corey Ballantyne, who's a cornerback, 1 year, $2 million. I guess, like, just generally, what have you liked that they've done? Oh, the one we didn't talk about, Xavier McKinney, 4 years, $68 million that they added from the Giants, safety. What have you liked that they've done, and what have you not liked?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a sensitive issue at first when you look at losing some of these fan favorite players, Bakhtiari, Aaron Jones. You got to consider bang for your buck here. Bakhtiari's career is over, basically, right? Maybe. Aaron Jones, injury risk, older than Josh Jacobs. You got to like that move when it comes down to just the logistics of it and remove the emotion from it. So I think you got to really look at this team as trying to be really good and looking at a championship window here for the next 3 to 4 years. Xavier McKinney, one of the best safeties in the game right now. Have to like that. And then bringing back, like you highlighted, Phil, some key pieces from this team last year, players that were, I think, playing really well for us. So overall, I think that's what I like is that we're really trying to be competitive overall and really trying to meet the needs. Offensive line, I think we're hopefully going to draft. I think we didn't go out and get a linebacker. I think I looked at a guy like Devin White who signed for I think like $7 million with Philadelphia. I'm like, why couldn't we go get a piece like that? But other than that, I mean, overall, there's not too many dislikes. I just really want to see this draft and see what we do here. But yeah, I think we're proving to be really competitive, and I think we made a lot of good moves here overall. And I think we put money in the right places. And I think we probably in the Midwest have a West Coast bias, not watching a lot of Oakland or Las Vegas Raider games. Josh Jacobs is really, really good, and I think when I've opened my eyes as a Packer fan and took back any biases I had, we got a stud. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, it's good to see the Packers make the move that we all wanted them to make. Xavier McKinney, that was the move. And guess what? They finally did it. So being a Packer fan as long as we have, that is very rare. So we're gonna celebrate that one. And then Josh Jacobs, yeah, I agree. Upgrade over Jones. Maybe this is a hot take, I don't know, but I don't understand the personal feelings with Aaron Jones. I get the ties to liking a player and him being good for the community and the organization, but to me it's all about winning. It's all I care about. And to me, Josh Jacobs is an upgrade both this season and in the future. So I'm happy with what they did. I don't love bringing back A.J. Dillon. I know, Phil, that you do not agree with that. I would have rather – I still think they probably draft a running back, maybe two. But I wish they would have moved on. And I get it, but I just don't know what he brings that Josh Jacobs really doesn't. But overall, I think it's a really good offseason so far. And like Frem, you said, the offensive line and linebacker, 2 positions I'm keying in on. I still think they need a stud receiver too. And that doesn't have to be like an elite guy in a trade, but I wouldn't mind investing high draft capital into another receiver. I don't think our room is as strong as people think. And I hope that's something we prioritize. So curious to see how that plays out.
Dude, I think that's a hot take for most people because I'm with you. I don't think we have a true wide receiver one. And some people might say, well, that's okay. Like, get it to the open guy, whatever. But I think in a clutch moment, in a key moment, you do want that guy. And man, yeah, if Brian Thomas Jr. is there from LSU, I don't think he will be per se, but if he's there at 25, do you draft him? It's really knowing that you need a linebacker, knowing that offensive line depth would be nice. Even defense, cornerback, safety depth would be nice. It's an interesting take. I think with Aaron Jones, I think people love him because, one, he's such a good dude. And like, if anything, he kept the team kind of afloat this year when things weren't going well because of his leadership, that kind of thing. It feels like a lot of the players look up to him. The reality is, and I'm with you guys, I mean, maybe it's just because we do fantasy baseball stuff and we see good players come and go and that kind of thing. But the injuries have been a problem the last 3 years. If he hadn't torn it up the last 5 or 6 games of the season, or he was good but not great, I don't think anybody would have a problem with the move. I think because of the way this year went, us defying expectations, Aaron Jones playing a huge role in that, looking amazing. You know, he really did look amazing for these last 5 games. I think that's what people are seeing. I'm like, how do you let that guy go? How do you not keep that guy? And here's the thing. I could actually see it backfiring just this year. If Josh Jacobs gets hurt, Aaron Jones has a good year, which, yeah, you may not agree, but especially him being on the Vikings. If he wasn't on the Vikings, I don't even know if anybody would care as much, but it's just because he went to the Vikings. And like, especially growing up where I grew up in Eau Claire, you probably felt a little bit in Baraboo. I mean, people really hate the Vikings from where we're from. And so it's like, I think there's just that sense of like, like that's the one team we didn't want to see him. Man, I love what we've done. It would be nice to get a linebacker, Jerome Baker, Jordan Brooks, one of those guys. I think they don't want to invest the money. The salary cap went way up even more than what people expected this year. And so I think like running backs got paid a little bit more than maybe some people expected, just a couple million more, not a ton. And then linebackers got more than what they had in the past. And I trust Goot, and Goot I trust. I think it'll be fine. Will we need to draft 2 linebackers? And maybe the answer is yes. Or do they find somebody, they trade for somebody? We have 11 picks in this draft. It'll be kind of interesting. But yeah, for them to get Xavier McKinney, for them to get Josh Jacobs, 2 former Alabama teammates coming back together. Yeah, it is exciting. And yeah, I mean, Josh Jacobs is the oldest person now out of the skill position players on that roster at 26. And so it is pretty exciting in Green Bay with what's coming up here. Any last thoughts on that before we move on?
You can see us missing Aaron Jones in the passing game. I think that's an area where he did really well. And I'd love us to, draft a Braylon Allen, somebody like that. I just hope this draft, like you said, Phil, and Goot we trust, like, go get the guy. Like, if we're getting the guys and we're rounding up, like, the best possible team, like, go, like you said, Chris, like, go trade up, go get a receiver. Go get one of these studs from LSU. Go get, like, somebody who's going to be that number 1, or go get, a really good compliment to Josh Jacobs. Like, let's not sit back and just, fine. If we go spend draft capital on offensive linemen, I will live with that. But I don't want us to draft some, another, Kevin King, or, some secondary player who we've never heard of before. No, we got to go get somebody with some pedigree, who's been proven a bit here, and who's going to really help us be more competitive. This is not a time to invest in somebody to mold for the next 3 years. Like, go get somebody who can make an impact right now.
You just brought up Kevin King because we passed TJ Watt for him, and we still feel it. As I said that, I felt it in my soul a little bit. But
I know we've picked too many guys in the secondary. Who's our other Georgia guy? I'm just blanking on his name right now. But yeah,
Eric Stokes.
Yeah, these guys aren't. I know we have Jair, right? And some will maybe question, how his career turns out here. We'll see. But I want to go get somebody who maybe we've heard of, and somebody who, is more proven.
Yeah, 2 things. Aaron Jones can't stay healthy. Not concerned about him going to the Vikings. He'll play half a season. That's fine. He can be good for half a season. 2, linebackers really easy to draft. It's just been proven over time. We can find linebackers. And the other thing is we can find offensive linemen. We're a really good organization at finding mid-round offensive linemen and turning them into starters. So I'm with you, both of you. We don't need to draft those positions high. I would rather go after the skill position of wide receiver, corner, something like. I just would rather get more of those impact positions that are harder to find players later in the draft. So that's where I'm at, and I just feel like we're going to do something big on draft night. I don't know what it's going to be, but signing these two players is just the start of something. I believe that we're kind of going all in right now.
We are O-line U. When it comes to NFL teams on the offensive line, Zach Tom is probably an all-pro, like all-pro caliber right tackle. I mean, the one big miss, if there is a miss, it's Josh Myers over Creed Humphrey, who got drafted, I think, maybe 10 picks later by the Chiefs, who's an all-pro. But we just don't make mistakes that often. And I mean, I read some blogger with the Giants who was like really pumped about John Runyon and said he was ascending. And the reality is, if you watch the Packers and John Runyon had his worst year this year, and he was in a tandem back and forth shifting series with Sean Ryan, who we drafted third round, who looks like he could start for us. So the thing is, we know when to let players go, offensive linemen go, and we almost always draft them well. So really excited for this coming year. And what's awesome is Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs each had multiple teams going after them and said, we want to go play with Jordan Love. And man, to hear people say that about Jordan Love, it's just a beautiful thing. Any last things you guys want to say before we end our pod tonight? Anything we missed? Anything that's on the mind?
Give a shout out to my buddy Zach Moss. He gave me this beer that was at his house when he bought it, and he's listening to the pod here. So it's Green's gluten-free amber ale that was somewhere in his home. Cheers to you, Zach.
Wasn't Zach Moss just signed by the Bengals?
Yeah. Moss, with 2 A's. But hey.
Oh, sorry.
Zach Moss, he signed too.
Got it. I like that Zach Moss too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I guess 2 things. Number one, the tax in Minneapolis is insane. It's just dumb. It's way too high.
Aaron Jones, what were you thinking?
You want to pay like $10 for a meal, it ends up being like 15 somehow. It doesn't make any sense.
It's a very liberal state.
Yeah. But number 2, this is tipping my hand for fantasy baseball. There's a prospect. His name is Wyatt Langford for the Texas Rangers. And I don't know if you guys know about him. He was drafted last year as the number 1 prospect in baseball. He's tearing it up in spring training, probably going to make the opening day roster. He could legitimately be an all-star this year. So he's just a guy I'm keeping my eye on in terms of high impact in MLB. And I know we're not talking about that tonight, but if you are drafting out there or you're thinking about baseball, keep an eye on that name because he's about to be a stud. Or buy his cards now while they're really cheap. Or cheaper.
Great call.
Yeah, man, the card market. Sports cards, man. You can make some money.
What do you got, Phil?
My wife told me to watch more sports. This was a couple days ago. She's like, I'm trying not to encourage you to watch more sports, but we should watch more NBA.
Oh.
She wants to watch the Nuggets, which it was like such a beautiful thing to hear. And then she also brought up the Big Six in the Premier League. She said, oh, are they part of the Big Six? And I felt known and loved in that moment. So Emily Schultz, you
shout out Emily Schultz. Let's go.
2 things, Emily. How much did Phil have to pay you to say that?
She's not even listening. She doesn't even care that I do this.
Doesn't care.
Keep going. No,
and
doesn't care.
2, my little guy, my oldest, is asking about the EPL. He wants to know about the teams. Phil, you got to feed me some info here because
he loves the relegation.
I'm getting quizzed right now.
There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm a Chelsea fan.
Team colors, team names, mascots. I need it.
Yeah, well, we need another pod for that. Thank you so much for listening. Again, send us feedback either in person, text, phone call, Twitter, otherwise known as the X. Want your response, want your feedback. But again, thanks for listening. And you're going to get, again, a double dip. Is that right, Chris?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Don't double dip a chip, but double dip on this podcast. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Enjoy the best 4 days of the sports year.
Let's go.